Delegate Frederickson,
Here.
Delegate Frizel,
Here.
Delegate Fuller,
Here.
Delegate Gallagher,
Here.
Deputy Speaker Gasson,
Here.
Delegate Green,
Here.
Delegate Harder,
Here.
Delegate Killian,
Here.
Delegate O'Malley,
Here.
Dean Omen,
Here.
Speaker Potash,
Here.
Delegate Sampson, Delegate Sampson, Delegate Ty,
Here.
Delegate Warner,
Here.
Delegate Wyman Colombo.
Here.
Madam Speaker, that's 14 delegates representing 91.07% of the county's population.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Clerk. And next we have approval of journals and minutes. Deputy Speaker, if you could move that. Number 6,
So moved.
regular meeting on July 2nd, 2025. Can we have a second?
Second.
And roll call vote, please.
Delegate Frederickson,
Yes.
Delegate Frizel, Delegate Fuller,
Present.
Delegate Gallagher,
Yes.
Deputy Speaker Gasson,
Yes.
Delegate Green,
I didn't see it, so present.
Delegate Harder,
Yes.
Delegate Killian,
Yes.
Delegate O'Malley,
Yes.
Dean Omen,
Yes.
Speaker Potash,
Yes.
Delegate Sampson, Delegate Ty,
Yes.
Delegate Warner,
Yes.
Delegate Wyman Colombo.
Present.
Madam Speaker, that is 11 representing 80.18% of the county's population.
All right, thank you very much. Now we're at the Committee of the Whole. Communications from members of the public. What did I miss? Oh, please, I'm sorry. I blocked that off, unfortunately. Adoption of the order of business.
Madam Speaker, I move that we adopt the order of business.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Delegate Frederickson,
Yes.
Delegate Frizel, Delegate Fuller,
Yes.
Delegate Gallagher,
Yes.
Deputy Speaker Gasson,
Yes.
Delegate Green,
Present.
Delegate Harder,
Yes.
Delegate Killian,
Yes.
Delegate O'Malley,
Yes.
Dean Omen,
Yes.
Speaker Potash,
Yes.
Delegate Sampson, Delegate Ty,
Yes.
Delegate Warner,
Yes.
Delegate Wyman Colombo.
Yes.
Madam Speaker, 13 representing 89.51% of the county's population.
All right, thank you, Mr. Clerk. Now, communications from members of the public and officials. Are there any? I see nobody raising their hand online, and there's nobody here to do that right now. Okay, next would be public comment. Is there any? That's the same entry, but just double checking. Communications from the regional commissioners, administrator, and directors. I see our Commissioner Ronald Bergstrom here, and I also see our administrator, Michael Dutton. Gentlemen, thank you for coming.
Good afternoon. I would give you a rundown on everything we've been doing. However, since I know you watch all our meetings, you know exactly what we've been doing. But I think the highlight was the fact that we were given a contract by, is that multimillionaire? The Gates Foundation to test alternate toilets at our test center, and was chosen
Might want to
Excuse
get a
me.
little closer to you, Mike.
Show-
Thank you.
chosen from across the country, you know, so it really is a credit to the people who are doing that test center, and it's going to be not only a credit to the county, but it's an innovative technology that's going to help people who don't have access to running water and so on. So, other than that, I don't have much to say. I'm usually not here doing this. And I don't know, is Sheila online? There's probably not. So I'm here to answer any questions you have over what we've been up to. So,
Okay, are there any? Yes, Delegate Green.
I'd just like to make a statement. I commend the county and the test center for moving forward in this direction and for this grant. I've said this a couple of times at the assembly that during COVID, there is a 3-part series that's called Inside Bill's Brain that has one segment on this particular topic. The other is on small scale nuclear, which I think would be very enlightening for people to watch. And the third section, I can't remember because at the time, I didn't think it pertained that much to the county, but I really sincerely thank the county for moving forward in this direction. That's huge. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that has a question for our Commissioner at this point? Yes, please, Delegate Hatter.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to watch the meeting yet. How specific is the grant? Is it, can it only be for certain things, or can it be, maybe Michael's the one to answer?
Mike is going to tell you. I'm
Yeah,
not the
okay.
techie here.
I
I just raised
the-
my hand, yay or nay, when they
What
put
the
this in front of me.
restrictions are and so on, because a lot of water and infrastructure and new technology is tied in with housing. So that's where I'm coming from.
So, so it is a fairly specific grant, and it's designed to develop testing standards and testing mechanisms for the alternative systems that the Gates Foundation has been investing in. So the objective here is to develop a toilet, for lack of a better word, non-sewer toilet that is licensable internationally, including in this country, and then can be used for all sorts of different applications. Obviously, third world countries that have sanitation issues. This is really what stimulated the whole initiative in the first place. But as we know, you've got very sensitive areas or areas we now know are very sensitive environmentally in this country, right here on Cape Cod, that would be potentially suitable for these types of things. So when you hear people say, well, it's not only something for the test center, it's not only some kind of pie in the sky notion. It's a really very practical. It's got it's a very practical application, very practical testing opportunity and certifying opportunity for us, not only for the receptacles, the toilets that the Gates Foundation has sort of invested in, but all sorts of different technologies. So it's really our opportunity to expand technologies or see expanded technologies in that particular field and test them and then be able to allow these companies to license them on a national basis. So
That's why I just want to make sure people keep an eye on this, because everybody right now is all hot about ADUs. And one of the most prohibitive things about building an ADU is enhancing septic systems if you're not on sewer, and compostable toilets, urine diversion, all of that, like these toilets, are crucial to getting enough housing on the Cape. So that's why I asked. I just want people to keep that in mind as the tests go on. Thank you.
Yes.
If you watch the meeting, after the presentation was made, I made a point of pointing out that this is not going to require more employees paid for by county funds. In other words, it's going to be self-supporting. Because I know there's some concern. I did it deliberately, brought that up because I know there's some concern that taking on some of these grants obligates us in the future to further expenditures. But I've been told by those who know, and this is not the case with this. So it's going to be, the money's going to come from our friend, Mr. Gates, and it's going to be used by us to further this technology, which really goes beyond the normal things that we do to benefit the people here on Cape Cod. This is going to benefit people worldwide, so it's good to be a part of it. The Barnstable County is a part of it. So,
Delegate Frizzell, please go ahead.
No match requirement. Gates Foundation essentially came to us, had learned about what we do, came to us, and really is paying us to develop a certifying test center. So there's no match requirement whatsoever. The term of the grant, I believe it's 2 years beginning later this year, but I'm not positive. I can get back on that. 2.8 million.
I'm going to go with Delegate O'Malley next and then Delegate Green because she already spoke once.
Thank you, Ms. Dunn. You just used the word certifying. Is the intent here that we become a certifying site for systems and that we become the good housekeeping seal of approval sort of thing?
That's actually a good way to look at it. I think it's an ISO standard. It's a new ISO standard that they're trying to build test facilities to be able to certify. So I think that's that. But the good housekeeping UL, is sort of the comparable. This would be the comparable in sort of the waste treatment.
Great, good
realm.
work too. Especially congratulations to Brian Baumgartel.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, Delegate Green.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Once again, kudos to Brian and to the whole county. 2.8 million is nothing to scoff at for sure. And this opportunity is absolutely outstanding. I wanted to ask a point of order. When other items of the agenda are here, will we?
Really the time for that?
Well, if it's for Commissioner Bergstrom to speak, will Commissioner Bergstrom be able to speak later on during the agenda?
If the Assembly lifts the rules and allows for that, so we can get to that when the time comes. Delegate
Thank you, Madam.
Killian.
You mentioned the technologies you hope to develop, perhaps new technologies. Are these going to be an open source technology? In other words, will they be owned by the county, Gates, or no one in particular?
No, I don't know the specific answer, but the county won't own the actual technology. The county will own the testing technology to that extent, but not necessarily the actual toilet technology.
So will they be just testing the technology or will they be developing the technology?
No, let me jump in. My understanding, and Michael can correct me if I'm wrong. Think about how we test alternative septic systems. Basically, vendors come to us.
Correct.
And we look at them and we say, this meets, the standard set by the state and federal government. And so I think it's going to be the same thing with these toilets. People are going to create this technology and we are the ones who are going to determine whether it meets regulations or not.
So it's about creating the testing protocols.
Yes.
Thank you.
There any other questions for either as far as our administrator goes, if this is a good time, unless anybody else wants to talk about the testing center, we would ask you to give us an update on the Housing Committee and AmeriCorps, if you would.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So the pinnacle of my municipal management career is talking about toilets. So I've succeeded. Yes, I've got two updates. One regarding the AmeriCorps program, and I can tell you that as I mentioned last time, I think I discussed AmeriCorps with the Assembly. We were in the middle of litigation. We weren't in the middle of litigation. We were part of litigation spearheaded by Maryland. The state of Massachusetts joined that litigation to contest the essentially the revocation of the grant funding, AmeriCorps grant funding. So that litigation worked out well for us in our favor. But it only releases the funds for our FY25-26 program. The other piece of good news is that the Massachusetts Service Alliance, which is sort of our AmeriCorps mothership, if you will, has secured the funding for programs for our next fiscal year. So we will plow ahead after all of that. We will plow ahead as if nothing happened, basically. The larger question is what kind of AmeriCorps funding will be included in the next year's federal fiscal year budget for AmeriCorps. That we will watch very carefully. That could determine whether or not the program survives after next year. So we will obviously watch that. I can tell you originally we had about 75 applicants for the limited number of spots that we had in the AmeriCorps program. At most recent count today, we had almost 100 applicants for the roughly 18 positions that we will end up granting. So clearly, there's a hunger for the program, certainly from the sort of the volunteer side. But long term, obviously, there are more questions than answers at this point. But we're watching it, and we'll watch the federal budget as it makes its way through the meat grinder very carefully. Do you want any questions on that? I'm happy to answer any questions on AmeriCorps.
That sounded pretty straightforward. We can move on to housing if that
Sure.
works for everybody.
Yep. All right. So I think as the Assembly knows, I put together the housing working group. I've got 8 core members right now. We have met and had some good discussions about the problems that the Cape faces. I will say that I anticipate adding members as we go along. But right now, I'm really focused on sort of the boots on the ground and what the folks who are actually dealing with affordable housing issues in the towns have to say, primarily, first off. And then I'll begin to expand out to look for others to join the group as we go along. As I mentioned, we had a first session earlier this month, and we have another session the end of this month. We've identified a number of the hurdles that the group thinks that do hamper housing development. Obviously, the first one, which doesn't take a rocket science, but it's sort of the NIMBY principle. I want housing, but I don't necessarily want it next to me. And I think there are a lot of things maybe the working group can't do, but there are a lot of things that conceptually the towns can do to confront some of that fear. New development versus redevelopment or adaptive reuse of existing structures, and I think that's another area where the working group might be able to make some practical suggestions over the long term. Another one, lack of developable land. Working group is not in a position to create more land, so we're not going to recommend that. That's the only thing that's safe to say. We're not going to recommend creating more developable land. Zoning, getting zoning changes, really, really good zoning changes, especially through town meeting, can sometimes be a very heavy burden, heavy challenge. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that. The shifting political winds, whether affordable housing is a focus, as you well know, can shift depending on who's on the Barnstable Council or the select boards on the Cape. And then obviously water and sewer accessibility. I mean, so much is driven, as Delegate Harder mentioned, so much is driven by accessibility to water and sewer. You can build all the units in the world, but if you can't put water in them and you can't put bathrooms in them, then that seems to be a problem. So those are some of the challenges, sort of off the bat, some of the ideas kicked around. And again, we're at a very initial stage. So some of the ideas kicked around were, providing sort of regional assistance when it comes to zoning. What that looks like, I'm not quite sure. Universal excitement about the shared housing program and the continuation of the shared housing program. So that is helpful. And then we had a very brief discussion about real estate transfer fee. Which is a funding mechanism, for those that don't know, is essentially a funding mechanism in order to develop funds to specifically to address housing issues, and whether or not that would be suitable for the Cape. And I know and you probably know Nantucket looked at that over the last couple of years. The Martha's Vineyard has kicked around that idea since 2005, but more recently got more organized about it. Both of those initiatives failed at the Beacon Hill level. But again, if the county ever got to a point where that could be a reasonable funding option, then the real question becomes, okay, how do you expend those funds? And that's where the rubber really hits the road. So that's that gives you just a very quick update. The more you dig into housing, the more you realize how much work there is to do. And the more, the objective sort of begins to shift around and becomes a little bit more nebulous than just, flat out providing more housing. But it's a good, it's a place where I think the county should be. Certainly, it's a regional issue. No town is free from housing issues and challenges. So it's a good place to be right now. So I'm happy to answer questions about that.
Delegate Frizzell, you're the first hand I saw.
The light's not on. There you go.
This was working.
This isn't the first time I've had this problem, and I'm not going to suggest that has anything to do with a new member being initiated or something like that. There you go. Thank you. So, thank you. Yeah, that's better. Can you give us an idea who's on this committee? Who are the members and the towns? What towns are represented, and what are they? Town managers or other people?
Most of them are housing, they're planning folks and affordable housing specialists in the towns. And so we've got Barnstable, Brewster, Chatham, Dennis, Sandwich, Truro, and Yarmouth represented so far. And I'm fairly sure we'll have somebody from Falmouth shortly. So, but mostly, so then let me give you kind of my rationale. So I was trying to shy away from at this point, from bringing in, the political side of the house, because I want the operational side of the house to really define what the issues are, what issues they are facing, and then have some initial discussions about what potential solutions could be. At that point, then I think the political input is really important, because it lets us know what's feasible, what's not feasible. I'm not going to come to the assembly with a recommendation on some big grandiose housing idea if it's just a no-go. It's never gonna fly. I really do want to bring you something that's going to be worthwhile and practical. So that was sort of my rationale. So right now it's just the people that deal with the housing issues day to day.
Delegate Wyman Colombo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think you've answered part of my question. So you have housing people on the panel, and that makes perfect sense to me. Being on the Cape, I see environmental concerns and housing as great needs and interconnected needs. And I'm wondering if you would consider bringing an environmental person to the table. I'm thinking, even with the technology we have, even if everybody was on a sewer service area, there's only so much flow, regardless of how well that effluent's treated. I mean, I'm thinking of Falmouth at this point that's, looking to put an outfall pipe. So it seems to me not to stop the process, but to help guide the process, and to have somebody who is looking at those environmental concerns, the issue of increased flow, and then again, sewer systems or sewer service areas. So I just think that would be an addition, not to slow the process, but to make sure that the environment is considered from the get-go.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's actually an excellent point, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I will point out that I think the Assembly had actually asked, for that component to be included in the working group. So yes, short answer is yes. So.
Is there anybody? Oh, yes, please, Delegate Falah.
Has the group talked about the difference between affordable and attainable? Because in Orleans, for example, we have quite a bit of affordable housing. I think we're over 10%. But that group that's in between, that's, you know, your firefighters and your town employees and stuff that have difficulty finding homes in Orleans because they're at a too high a level for affordable, but they don't make enough to actually be able to buy something.
Mhm.
Have you talked about that at all?
Since it was our first session, we didn't dive into that, but it did get mentioned, and sort of we talked around, kicked around the notion that, you know, really the issue is housing. Obviously, you know, for a long time it was just affordable housing because everybody, you know, that could afford a house bought a house, and now you're in a place where not only can you not house affordable housing candidates, you can't have, you know, it's people at 100% of median income can't afford to live here. So we did talk about that a little bit, and so we'll see where that discussion goes. But your point's well taken and was recognized. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you for your work on this. I know when we passed that resolution, you know, as you've probably seen in these conversations and you going into it, there's a lot of work to be done on housing on the Cape, and it's an issue folks have been working on for decades. We're going to keep working on it for decades, and it's awesome to see that there's a group of folks having these kind of conversations regionally, because sometimes our towns get siloed in on themselves and really focus on, you know, specific parcels and on a day-to-day basis, you know, specific construction or specific redevelopment. And I think it's helpful to have a bigger picture for them for that point. And hopefully, you know, even beyond these first recommendations, you're going to be able to have this conversation continue on. So I guess I was wondering, do you anticipate, you know, this conversation is going to be going on for a long time, but especially if we're going to bring Beacon Hill into it, you know, we've got our 2-year terms that, like it or not, end pretty quick. And then I know up in Boston, they've got the same problem, and things move even slower up there. So to that point, do you anticipate being able to possibly have some short-term recommendations come to the full assembly while this working group continues doing good work and providing more recommendations and maybe even input into those recommendations once the assembly takes on?
I think short answer is yes. I don't see, and I think when I proposed creating a housing working group, I don't think there's any, it's not like doing a study where you know, spend all this time doing study and then you wait and you do a draft report and then a final report and boom, there you go. I think as we get ideas that the group thinks is workable, I think those will come to you, you know, as they go along. I don't think there's any reason to wait to give you just a laundry list of things that we think that the assembly should do. I think we'll, you know, trickle them out as they get fleshed out. So that's a good question.
Yes, please, Commissioner Bergstrom.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You know, the county, through the Cape Cod Commission and now through this working group, has spent a lot of time and effort on housing. I mean, it's the biggest issue on the Cape. Whenever you have a forum, people say, what are we faced with this housing? Okay. And we've risen to the occasion, like I say. But the problem is that the individual decisions on housing are not made by the county or the state. They're made by towns. They're made by ZBAs. They're made by planning boards. I'm going to a ZBA meeting tomorrow in Chatham, and it would pain me to think that they would discuss this without referring to what we've already done and what we intend to do, you know, because we don't want a study to go on the shelf. We want people to be able to utilize it and understand where the needs are. And if somebody says up, well, we really need rental housing or we really need owner-occupied housing, we'll have the statistics to show what the actual need is, you know, and you know, and how many people would be eligible for these things. So I just want, and I sit on the Cape Cod Commission too, and sometimes I think we have to make sure that these studies don't go on the shelf. We have to make sure that people utilize them and that it gives them an advantage in making the decisions that they, are you on the ZBA or the planning board?
Yeah, well, I don't want to spiral into housing. Your information is important and relevant. I'm the chair of the I'm the chair of the Chatham ZBA, so I'll see you tomorrow. But so unless there's anything else beside about the updates that we've received, just on the update on the housing now, please go ahead. Nope. Okay, very good. Well, at this point, thank you so much. And the assembly is going to convene. And I am going to read the committee review report from the Charter Review. And the Barnstable County Charter Review met in person on Wednesday, July 9th, 2025 at 4 p.m. Committee members heard comments from Robert O'Leary, State Senator, Cape Cod and the Islands District from the year 2000 to the year 2010. Henry S. Rauschenbach, State Senator, Cape and Islands District, 1988 to 2000. Mr. Rauschenbach emphasized the need to consider regional services and the importance of understanding the outcomes of previous recommendations. Mr. O'Leary supported the idea of restructuring the county government to enhance its effectiveness and suggested incorporating political leadership from towns into the county structure. Both highlighted the significance of maintaining strong relationships with the state legislature to support county initiatives. The committee voted to recommend that the Assembly of Delegates file a petition with the approval of the Board of Regional Commissioners to the Massachusetts legislature for approval to submit the amendments to voters relating to the composition, mode of election, and term of office of the legislative body and chief executive, as well as appointment of the administrative office of the Cape Cod Regional Government under Charter, Section 9-1, Paragraph 3, by a vote of 6 in favor, none opposed, and 1 abstained. Commissioner Lyons abstained from voting because she understands that there may be an occasion that this would come before the commissioners for approval. So she thought it was prudent not to vote at this time. So I'm going to just say that in English, essentially. What the committee talked about after they had received information from those invitees and the meeting prior to that, where there was information from Commissioner Lyons, also Andrew Gottlieb of the Association to Protect Cape Cod, and Mr. I can't think, Paul Nizwicki, who has an extensive resume that I'm not going to talk about now, but if you didn't listen to the meeting, you oughta. And they all talked about the issue of restructuring, and the committee decided to make this motion. And what this motion was asking, the assembly to consider, essentially, they recommend that the assembly consider drafting an ordinance that would have to be approved by the 51% of the assembly. And then it would go over to the Board of Commissioners, and it would need 2 out of 3 commissioners. If that all happened, and obviously this is about a restructuring that has not been discussed on how to do it or what to do. So this is a white paper, so to speak, essentially. And so basically they're asking, then the legislature would opine on it. And if it passed those 3 areas, then it would go to the voters at the end of the day for the voters to decide whether the charter should be restructured. The government should be restructured. There was no discussion at any point in time exactly what that should look like, what it would look like. And the Charter Review Committee can go ahead and provide an ordinance for your consideration based on the resolution, because the resolution specifically says nothing in this section shall limit the ability of the Charter Review to consider additional topics regarding the charter and ordinances, and the Charter Review Committee that the Charter Review Committee determines are necessary to fulfill its charge. So the reason why we're talking about it tonight is out of courtesy and to see what delegates think about having an ordinance worked on by the committee for your consideration. And then your consideration would include any amendments, a discussion. Maybe it would come to you more than once. I do not know. But that's what the discussion tonight is about, whether or not you have an appetite to think about the restructuring of this county government here in 2025. So that's what it's about. Is there a motion to put this on the floor in any way, shape, or form? Delegate Frizzell?
So, if I would,
Just for the purposes of discussion.
Would-
Oh,
right.
I apologize.
Right.
I apologize. My bad. Okay, so that's what that was about. Orders of the day. Now we get to discussion regarding Barnstable County Charter Review Committee recommendation on changes to the Cape Regional Government structure. So now we're in the discussion that I spoke of before. Yes, Delegate O'Malley. I just saw the O from here. I apologize.
Regarding this proposal, without content, for us to be talking about an ordinance that goes to the commissioners, to the voters, to the legislature, is kind of meaningless. That process is already laid out very clearly in the charter. That's what we would have to do if we want to change the composition, mode of election, et cetera, et cetera. I think it kind of runs the fact that there has not been a substantive discussion about what this reworking means and where anybody sees it going. It's very clear that this committee is kind of loaded with members who want to see real substantive change and frankly want to do away with the assembly. I mean, that's kind of an overwhelming impression that one takes away from the lineup of people speaking. And since we're not there yet, we haven't agreed to that. Clearly, unless the assembly agrees to it, that can't happen. So that's a very formidable first discussion. The other thing I have to say about this is we've jumped very quickly in 2 meetings to here's what the assembly should do and starting drafting legislation, when in fact this body was asked in a resolution, was tasked with forwarding suggestions for what changes were needed for the charter. And I haven't seen a single reference to any of the stuff. Now, I don't actually know what each one of us might have suggested. I know I wrote a piece that was 9 or a page. I mean, it was a long piece that I wrote, breaking the charter down paragraph by paragraph. I had a lot of thoughts about what substantive stuff that needs to be corrected. The charter is god-awful the way it looks at the moment. It's really antiquated. Well, we haven't dealt with that. We've gone straight back to the 2012 question, should we do away with the assembly and have 7 commissioners? So that's my take. We're not ready for this yet. This body has a long way to go. It really must consider the suggestions that have come from the delegates here about what we see as the issues. We're the ones who work with this on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis, and I think we have a real perspective on some of the things that need to be brought up to date in the charter and some of the things that really need to be clarified, and in particular, without getting so far as tearing apart county government and basically putting an end to both the Board of Commissioners and to the Assembly of Delegates and replacing it with a new body. There are lots of things that I know have been suggested that aren't apparently being taken up. And I feel a little frustrated at that hijacking.
The only thing I want to correct is that we did a motion and that there was been 3 meetings, not 2. And I'm just going to technically make any corrections that are standing out. And number 2 is that we've already charged through a motion our clerk and counsel, whose counsel is actually online today, to deal with the language changes that we thought was somewhat perfunctory that need to happen. So we've already tasked them with that. And as far as the committee being loaded, I just will tell you that I had 0 discussions with anybody when the committee was formed about their opinions on what to do. And this happened organically. Michaela Wyman Colombo, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To address some of the concerns from the delegate from Provincetown, I think I shouldn't say think. I know I spent, and I believe everybody else spent considerable time reading all of the suggestions that were made. And I think those suggestions were really important. We also agreed that we would bring people in from the outside, and we did that. We've had only 4 people in from the outside now, but people who are well established and who have worked in government for a period of time. We had Andrew Gottlieb from APCC. We had Paul Niedzwiecki here. And then we had the 2 state senators who had worked on the 2012 plan. I think it's important for us as a committee to listen to the recommendations, not to necessarily follow all of the recommendations, but to listen and be mindful. One of the things we discussed doing here was bringing a variety of people in from the outside. And when you do that, you want to ensure that you're taking what they say with seriously, at least contemplating what they have to say. At the last meeting, and I don't believe this committee was loaded. I don't think I was part of a committee being loaded. But at the last meeting, it certainly, I think, became apparent to some of us as we're looking at this, that we have this long charter with many inconsistencies. But one of the questions posed to us, and I think it was the first meeting, and I think it might have been Andrew Gottlieb, I don't recall, but it was, are you sure you want to go through and make these small changes that actually are dealing with inconsistencies, or is there a structural piece you should look at? At that point, at least to me, it made sense. It made sense to look beyond going through and fixing small edits. Edits and confusion, and actually look at structure. One of the things I thought of and I heard from other members of the committee was that certainly in looking at structure, we have a system now, and I'm relatively new to this. This is my 2nd term, but I know we spent the lion's share of the first term I was here in an ongoing argument between the Assembly of Delegates and the commissioners. And I do remember saying at one point, I'm not sure how this benefits the people we are serving, which is the residents of Barnstable County. So thinking about that, and I think the speaker contextualized this well when she said that there was no talk about what this should look like, but rather if you're looking at a charter that's as old as this, you look at the comments, and I'm not saying we should go with the comments of the 2012 committee. We should go by the people who've come in yet, but I think we need to look at all of that. I don't know what the changes would be. We didn't get that far, but it seems like a better way to use time to be able to say, let's explore structural change, a structural change that would result in a more responsive and more efficient government for the county, and bring that back to the assembly and get feedback. I don't think there's any preconceived notion about what this is going to look like. At least I don't have that notion. But to spend the time to go through and make simple edits and take care of some confusions and go through the entire thing and then say, now let's look at structure, seems to be not a good way to move this forward. So I certainly voted a yes to move this forward, to bring it to the assembly. My thought at the time is we would be coming back to the assembly many times and getting input. I have no preconceived notion at all about what government should look like. I know, though, it's not a personality issue. I think when you have 18 people and 2 boards on a relatively small budget, there's a lot of time that gets spent and a lot of money that gets spent that doesn't necessarily, it's not the most responsive way to meet the needs of the residents of Barnstable County. So thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Wyman Colombo. Who else would like to comment? Yes, are you pointing? Are you? Okay, thank you. Delegate Tai.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Speaker. My confusion in all of this, I thought that the Charter Review Committee was working on this, and how did an ordinance come out of what I thought was part of what they were going to be working on in regard to structure, in addition to the editing. So I felt as though things have been leapfrogged before doing actually more work. And I want to know, where does that ordinance come into?
I'm gonna let Delegate Wyman Colombo with her hand up explain that.
Thank you. I think the important piece, and from my perspective, and I don't wish to speak for everybody on that committee, but the notion of bringing an ordinance forward was to ensure that we knew that this assembly was open to this process moving forward. The ordinance, I don't think we're asking for an
I'm gonna just
Okay.
jump in and I'm gonna let, no, we're gonna talk when you're recognized only. Okay, so I'm just gonna help Delegate Wyman Colombo for a moment. So the issue of an ordinance is in the charter as to a way to change the structure. And so what Patrick Princey, a member of the review committee, did was he suggested that would be an approach that the assembly should take. There are other ways to do this. One is that there'd be an elected charter review commission that would have to be, they would run alongside all the delegates. So it's complicated, and I don't really want to go there today. So that's one way, though. And another way is for the assembly of delegates and the commissioners, by a majority of both boards, come together on a recommendation. And so all the charter review committee is trying to figure out today is, what are your thoughts on us spending time taking that approach to give you a recommended ordinance? That's it. A recommended ordinance that you could say, you could tear up, or you could try to amend, or you could vote up or vote down. This is all this is. It's like, I think it's called the white paper that the committee would work on. And that's how the issue of an ordinance came about. Does that satisfy you at all, Delegate Tai?
So you're saying that in order to deal with the structure, discussing the structure in meetings, we have to have an ordinance?
No, at the end of it, it would have to be an ordinance to do it that way, the way that he recommended. And that's why it gets awfully complicated to try to put it together, because it isn't together yet. So I just wanted to make sure that you understand that there's no ordinance before you, there's no vote. There is a discussion to see people's thoughts and who is next. Just be honest, who is next? I'm going to go with Delegate Killian, and then I'm going to go down the road.
If you
this
could
way.
clarify, you gave an overview of the process, and you could just fill in some details. So what is the timeline? It seems like this is moving ahead in order to get it to the ballot by next fall. So there's dates that we have to sort of abide by. In other words, what will we actually be giving to the legislature and when that they would vote on? And so what does that look like?
I'm going to see if our clerk knows the dates on that, but I can just tell you that I think it's sometime in February or March, but I could be wrong. Mr. Clerk? If you know.
If you give me another 10 or 15 seconds, I can pull up timeline that we have. Give me a moment.
Okay.
Point of information, Madam Speaker.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Is there currently a motion on the floor that we're
There's
discussing?
no motion on the floor, and there may not be today, or there could be. We'll see. This is on for discussion. So let me know when you're ready, Mr. Clerk, or we could go on to another
Sure.
comment.
Hold on one second. It looks like the Charter Review Committee itself has a 10-month trigger, which would bring it to January 12th. But also, you've got a deadline looming, even if you didn't want to deal with the legislature. If you did it yourself, and there are ways to do this under Section 9(1) that don't deal with structure, it looks like you've got like May or June to do it theoretically, but the real practical deadline is whenever the Secretary of State's office tells you that you need it. If you were going to include petitioning the legislature, now you're on a whole different time frame that has to do with the rules of the legislature and when they would consider a petition. And so you're going to back up from when the Secretary of State's office tells you that it needs to be printed. But then you're also, if you're talking about structure, you're going to need to deal with what the practical deadlines are at the general court for how that would move and how you would get that permission before the Secretary of State needed the language, right?
So that's what I'm unclear on. So we would be asked to, this ordinance would just say, we're going to look at it, but would we need another ordinance?
No, there's no ordinance that says we're gonna look at
What
it.
does the ordinance say then?
This is not,
specifically?
there's no ordinance in the universe about this right now.
Okay.
Nothing.
So,
Zero. There is a motion that was made by the Charter Review Committee by Delegate Princey that was approved. And what that is that the Charter Review Committee take a look at developing an ordinance for the
Mhm.
Assembly's consideration. That's it.
so this is a vote, we will be voting to develop an ordinance and develop a structure over a period of time, meeting the guidelines with the state.
If we were going to vote today, all it would be is that you'd like to see the Charter Review Committee give you something at some point in time within the time frame. That's it. That you think that's a good idea.
And when they produce that, then we will be voting to move that forward to the legislature.
Nope. When they produce that, you would be voting whether to accept it, reject it, or amend it, and then accept it. And then it would have to go to the commissioners.
Understood?
When it goes to the commissioners, we need 2 out of 3.
Mhm.
And then it would go to the legislature to see what they say about it. And if they approve it and we do if everything happened in the proper time frame, if we could not talk during the meeting unless you recognize that would be very helpful today. Then the legislature would end up on the ballot and the voters would decide.
So just so I understand, you want
Please.
this, vote. The committee wants this vote because they do not want to go forward with these discussions if they believe that the assembly was not approved.
It's not necessarily true.
Okay,
This is just, like I said, a courtesy because the committee can go ahead and give you something and you can say no.
that's what I thought.
If you want that, that's something that you probably should think about, you know. Who wants to be next? Delegate Green.
Madam Speaker, I just want to be clear that I have a number of points for clarification. And I would like to have the courtesy to go through the entire
Okay.
statement.
I'm going to give you an answer to that, and the answer is in our rules. You would get 5 minutes. And after the 5 minutes, if anybody else wants to speak, they would get their time. And then after everybody else is satisfied, you would get 1 more 5-minute slot. That's our rules. So start
So
your
I
5
just wanted
minutes.
to clarify.
Yes, start your 5 minutes. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have several points I'd like to make in clarifications, explanations I will ask for at the end of my statement by the speaker or through the speaker. As background, I was appointed to the Assembly in 2015 by my select board when the seat was vacant. I was the 1% plus that voted to keep the structure of county government with each town having a voice at this level of government. I was asked to step up and apply for the position by then Speaker Bergstrom. He knew my position on the issue because I had been a citizen advocate about various topics since 2010. In 2016, I was elected by an overwhelming majority of the vote. That election, I was opposed. It appeared to be common knowledge. Sheila Lyons' same point of view that county government be restructured was a platform of the opposition. In fact, there were a number of opinion pieces in local papers, and there was quite a lot of debate on the issue. The people on the Outer Cape were very outspoken and overwhelmingly voiced the opinion they want 1 delegate for each town and especially want the viewpoint of the small towns to be heard. The Assembly of Delegates, as constituted, should be retained. I have been trying to be that voice for my town ever since. With that backdrop, I have a 3-part statement with clarifications I would like explained to the Assembly. 1, please explain why there was a motion entertained at the July 9th meeting of the Charter Review Committee in the first place. I don't see any agenda item that calls for the structure of county government even being discussed. In fact, you clarified on the YouTube recording at around 53 minutes when the former Speaker Princey was speaking that the committee was on to item 7. He agreed. The version of the agenda I received says item 7 is charter sections discussions. There's no indication that there would be any discussion of restructuring of county government. Further, if you go to today's assembly agenda, it includes the following statement. Please note that for any item listed after the assembly convenes, it may take official action, including votes. There was nothing of the sort on the agenda for the July 9th meeting. How could any assembly delegate or any member of the public know this would be a topic of discussion, nonetheless a vote taken? Number two, I would like to think the final 7 members were chosen with the following in mind. They are expected to be open-minded and can listen to all sides of the issues prior to forming a decision. Please explain how a vote on this topic could even be entertained when all sides have not been heard. How can the members of the committee make a fair assessment by hearing the predictable side that people who have been here and following county government for over a decade knew the people presenting and their positions, which, except for former speaker and the current Commissioner Bergstrom, has been to remove the voice of each town and to remove the assembly of delegates. At the end of the last assembly meeting, I even told the speaker I was putting together groups of people on the Outer Cape to speak to the committee, and the speaker said, email her when they're ready. Number 3, please explain, someone, why the speaker told me I could write a resolution about the composition of the Charter Review Committee to address my concerns in January. Because when I did, why did 2 delegates that co-sponsored the resolution withdraw their names prior to the assembly meeting? That resolution called for the Charter Review Committee to include at least 7 to 10 people and at least 1 member of the assembly from each of 4 districts, the Upper Cape, being Bourne, Sandwich, Falmouth, and Mashpee, Mid Cape, Barnesville, Dennis, and Yarmouth, Lower Cape, Brewster, Chatham, Harwich, Chatham, and Orleans, and the Outer Cape, Eastham, Wellfleet, Truro, and Provincetown. The current makeup has 2 delegates from the Upper Cape and the speaker from Chatham. Maybe let's include 2 more additions. Why did, when I tried to even introduce the resolution with my name only for an honest discussion on the floor of the assembly, it could not even be discussed? Then why did the speaker ask me to withdraw it, which I did not? Then it was in the minutes that I withdrew it. I had not. Then the speaker repeatedly asked me to withdraw it. I regretfully withdrew it. No matter what any speaker says, and it's important for me that things are on the record. I'm resubmitting the resolution today, so it's on the record. Please respond to all 3 points so we can have an honest discussion with some more facts on the table. Thank you.
I just want to let you know that you're just about at your 5 minutes, but you just 20 more seconds. Do you want to start your other one?
No, that's.
No? Is that the full extent?
Well, I will say that I think that the Assembly of Delegates is one of the biggest bargains that this county has, where we get $824 a year take home. And this is a $28 million budget, but the grants are another at least 10 million, if not more. And we had almost 3 million added to it. I mean, we have a bargain. I mean, this is absolutely absurd and ridiculous. Each town deserves a voice.
Thank you very much. Who wants to go next? Yes, please, Delegate Hatter.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The question is, what exactly do the towns and the Cape residents need from county government? For example, the dredge is my favorite county service that the towns would never be able to afford or to coordinate with private companies. It is another service the towns can save. IT is another service the towns can save money on, and there are many ways we can help with the infrastructure challenges such as clean water, solid waste disposal, and coastal resiliency. There are also some things that I'm not sure we should be spending money on that would probably be better served if we made them strong enough to spin off into nonprofits. You know, I'm a huge proponent of the county helping with the housing crisis, but that's something that I also see as becoming its own entity when up and running. I have been thinking about structure change since my first term on the Assembly when I was named to the Recall Provision Committee. I have thought through many permutations with only 5 to 7 at-large commissioners or one entity of 5 regional and 4 at-large delegates. And the only answer I keep coming back to is that each town must be represented. While people question the efficacy of a 15-member board, in my time here, I can only think of a few times when the votes were strongly divided. And in those situations, we were always cordial and respectful. Perhaps the smaller towns don't have the percentages to win a vote on their own, but there have been many times when the representatives are able to get the support of the larger towns for their needs. Looking at the history of our county, it seems that the problems always originate with the commissioners. As those are partisan political positions, it seems that there are many times when their personal agendas get in the way of doing what's right for the county, especially when they also serve their towns on the select boards. Unless the commissioners are seriously violating open meeting laws, I'm actually not sure what they do. They listen to the presentations by the departments and they vote yes or no on what the county administrator and finance director propose. Yet they almost never discuss the merits of anything put before them. The assembly does the work of checking the budget, trying to rein in spending, and supporting initiatives suggested by the departments. The assembly holds public hearings and communicates with the towns. The subcommittees of the assembly hold meetings where deep dives and creative thinking on issues occur. I have gone back and forth on this many times, but in the end, I always come to the conclusion that the commissioners are superfluous and a single board of representatives from each town with a strong county administrator and finance director is the most logical solution. As I don't expect the Board of Commissioners to agree to that plan, it appears that we are now headed to an elected charter commission, thus leaving all the necessary changes needed presently on the side. Being told that all the language changes are being considered by the lawyer without our knowledge of what changes are being considered by the lawyer is to me another example of the speaker doing the work of the Assembly of Delegates behind our backs. I do not want any more secrecy. We all voted so many times for changes to the charter, for other things that needed to be discussed. And we have been left out of this system by the speaker choosing the members of the commission, of the committee, which we all voted on, but then only having guests that were completely one-sided. And I think you've done a disservice to the assembly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Yes, Delegate Frizzell. And then we're going to get to Delegate Frederickson online.
Oh, great. Oh, thank you, Madam Speaker. So I listened to the meetings that took place of the Charter Committee, and I have to say it did to some extent surprise me that we took a turn to the bigger picture. And I think it was actually Commissioner Bergstrom who made the comment when he testified, and he didn't testify for the structural change. He said we could go big or go small, I think was the words that the commissioner used. And I think he was recommending going small at the end of the day, and made some very practical comments about how our system of government here, when you have an executive and a legislative branch, there's always tension. It doesn't matter who the players are. You can change them, but it will still end up with tension. Witness the federal government for one. Look at the state government. I mean, you change the players, you still get the same tension. It's inherent. Then I read more of the history of the charter we have today that we're operating under, and what were they trying to do? And it seemed to me that they were trying to replicate something close to like a town government structure where you have an executive select board and you have a town meeting that is either representative or an open town meeting, or it could be in some cases a town council as in town of Barnstable. So they were trying to do that. Then I heard from a person who testified, I think it was Mr. O'Leary, who mentioned the name of someone I'm not going to recall it exactly, who was actually very instrumental in the drafting of our charter, who was also very instrumental in the drafting of the National Seashore Act in 1961. And he was someone who was very Washington oriented, being someone on the Senate staff, I believe. And he was trying to create checks and balances, trying to create Congress and an executive, sort of. All well and good. Interesting history. But then other speakers were talking more about, like, wait a minute, we're not a town government. We're a regional government. We're supposed to be doing regional things. We're not supposed to be replicating and being redundant of town governments. We're supposed to be something else. Are we really fulfilling that mission? Are we really doing what we're supposed to be doing? That was really, the shared services was a big part in that speaker's mind of what was in the charter and what we should be focusing on. And he believed and others believe we've kind of lost our way. No one's at fault, but it's the way things have evolved by our history with this charter. So it seemed to me, from listening to all those speakers, that while it wasn't, I think, on any of our minds when we put together the charter committee, that we weren't thinking big picture. We weren't thinking going big. And we were thinking more going small. And I might say that while I wasn't on the assembly, I did participate to some extent in question 6 that happened last year, which was an attempt to try to break some of this tension. And I have to say, folks, I think, no offense, too much inside baseball there. You're just not going to get the voters to follow what we're talking about. It just is impossible. Forget it. So it seemed to me that why not think big? At least consider think big. It doesn't mean we do big necessarily. The control over this is in our hands. What is before us today is nothing more than giving a sense of this body to the charter committee, whether we are saying over our dead body, you will never change where we are today. If 15 delegates, right? That's one approach, and I respect that approach. Believe me, I respect that approach. Or do we at least think, not yet act, think at least of another way that we may be able to do this. And then it comes back to us. And then we have control over what that looks like. And then it goes to the commissioners. It may or may not pass the commissioners. Who knows? You may not get 2 votes there, and then it's dead. If it gets 2 votes there, it goes to Beacon Hill. It may not go anywhere on Beacon Hill. We know things die there often, right? So it may not go anywhere. If it goes past Beacon Hill, the ultimate answer is in the hands of the voters of Barnstable County. That's where it should be. In my view, after working under this charter for more than 35 years, I think the voters of Barnstable County deserve another chance. Now, they could say no. We could stay right where we are. Or they could say yes to whatever we put together. Why this route rather than the elected independent route? Now, this particular recommendation is the Beacon Hill route, not the elected route. Number one, it's faster. We get to the goal line quicker. Number two, wouldn't we rather be the ones who are shaping what could be a structural change than an elected commission? In fact, we could even be, I think, the elected commission. So why go through that? And so for those reasons, at least where I stand right now, is I think the committee, charter committee, should consider this. And they should hear more testimony. It should be fair and open testimony. It shouldn't be one-sided testimony. And then come back to us with some draft of an ordinance. And then it's in our hands to then decide whether we want to say it's good, it's bad, or it's better if we make the following changes. But that's still way in the future for us to be decided down the road. So in my view, I would say to the charter committee, continue to think big if you want to think big. Let's look at that. Let's see what it looks like. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Feisel. And I agree with everything Delegate Feisel just said. I'm sorry. I just want to say that, full disclosure, I talked about it with him. We talked about the legal aspect of it. He's an attorney. I'm an attorney. Now I'll go to Delegate Frederickson. Please go ahead, Delegate Frederickson.
Good evening, everybody. First of all, to commissioners, I respect what you do, and I believe that working together is how you get things done. Second of all, I did listen to the meetings, and it seemed like we had the Hall of Fame of who's who in politics 12 years ago on giving opinions. And, you know, I got to respect what they have done, what they see. Secondly, I have not heard from one voter in Barnstable that says the county government should be changed. So that was just kind of interesting. And I must say, I am not opposed to taking a look of how to do things better. I honestly look at what we're doing here and learning what we're doing. Sometimes we're getting ahead of ourselves and things, and I'd rather see us get smaller, if anything, and concentrate on the things, as someone said during the meeting, that we do well and not get out of our lanes. I'm not sure we're doing anybody a good service. And I also thought, the way I was hearing it, and I could be wrong, that they basically wanted to keep the assembly and get rid of the commissioners. I don't know. I might have heard it that way, but that could be my poor hearing. One thing that was repeated a couple of times, which I was not in favor of, was the fact that they were saying that it should be a partisan seat. I am totally opposed to that. I think this county government should be nonpartisan, absolutely. So anything come forward that says it's a partisan election, forget it. You won't get my vote. Primarily, I cannot vote to say, yeah, go do this, and then they're going to come back with some type of plan. You can do that anyway from the charter review. I don't know why you just didn't do that. This doesn't do anything except create some unnecessary questioning about what they're talking about, because there's really no plan other than to, hey, rush forward, we're going to dust off the 12-year-old, 14-year-old plan and let's throw it out there. Maybe that's something we're going to do. Maybe it isn't. Who knows? We don't know. We're kind of uninformed on what to do. So I think I'm covering most of my points. One thing I want to be, I am deeply concerned of, if we go bigger, as they say, I don't want to see any of taxpayers be burdened with more taxes for county government. Totally should not be taking place. We got to keep it concentrated on what we do and live within our means and get it done. That's how I firmly believe. And most importantly, after doing this job on some of the things that have come before us for the assembly, I really needed to go to my town government to get an understanding of what the issue is. So there has to be a direct line, which I think the assembly is capable of doing in its current form, to our town officials on what the current topics are. We're going to talk about one later and how it worked perfectly, because we are not experts in everything that's going on in our towns. And quite honestly, you separate that into 5 people taking care of 15 towns, you know, you're going to lose a lot of things. And even the commissioner, this isn't a dig at all, but they represent the entire Cape, and I find it hard to believe that all of them are communicating with the governmental officials on these big topics. I could be wrong, and I stand to be corrected if that's the case. But I find that very difficult for them to do, to get specific input. So at the end of everything I say, I cannot support anything more to vote on or whatever opinion at this point in the game. I am not opposed to having the charter review work on their charter, get all their language done that you're working on, fixing up those things, and perhaps having that sent to us for approval. And then side by side, they send a second proposal that includes, reformatting government, and then we can look at it. But with nothing in front of us, it just, I don't know, we're swinging at air.
Thank you very much, Delegate Frederickson. And the last thing you just said is essentially what probably would happen, that there would be you know, some different variations for our consideration. Wayne Sampson, please go ahead, Delegate Sampson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And to all of my fellow delegates, I was at the meeting and I've watched all of our meetings from the charter review since we started. Please remember, this is my first term on the Assembly. I bring no past baggage with me. I bring no preconceived motions at all, notions about past incidents or anything else. What I have recognized is the tremendous dedication of every single one of you and a commitment to your home community in the Assembly as a whole. When they discussed the charter review, because I'm a lawyer also and I like the legal aspect of these things, I volunteered for it, not knowing the whole history. But what has come out in these meetings over the last several months is the tremendous discord among the Assembly and the commissioners, and we have to find a way to move forward from that. And if we haven't been able to find a way to move forward in the last 10 years or 12 years since the prior charter reviews, then I want to make sure that we don't just keep doing the same thing and we're back here in another 12 years saying, what do we do? I was very interested in the speakers that came before the charter review and gave us such a tremendous history about the development and the people involved. Delegate Frizzell gave a great overview, and I'm not going to go over that, but he was right on point as to the issues that were brought up. I truly felt that we have an obligation to each of our communities and to all of the delegates on the Assembly that if we were going to change direction at all, that you should be properly informed. You should know that we are at least talking about it, because I would like to know what research has already been done, and is there something in there that has been discussed that we should be discussing, or if it didn't pass last time by one vote, what can we do to satisfy the members, the other members of our Assembly, as well as the constituents in the community? Maybe we can find some mutual ground that will serve everybody. But as a 50-year veteran of local government, I know that if we keep doing the same thing and keep getting the same results, then the system doesn't work. So I want to make sure that you are well informed, that we're at least looking at this. Please, and I don't know with the proper procedure, feel free, if you have a strong opinion, please talk to us, let me know. None of our minds are closed here. I think we're totally open-minded, but we have to look at everything. And I think that's the purpose that it's before you today, to make sure that you're staying informed. Just that we want to look at this area because we've heard so many people talk about it. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just going to say one thing before we go to anybody else. So at the second meeting, I believe, I remember Delegate Harder was recognized at the charter review meeting, and I was delighted to do that. And she advised me to keep my mind open when I said I liked 15 towns, 15 delegates. She specifically said to me, keep your mind open. And my mind is open. And I just wanted to point out that there are no secrets whatsoever. And I resent anybody saying that there is. So who wants to be next? Deputy Speaker, please go ahead.
48 minutes, I think, so far is how long we've been talking about this with no motion on the floor. So I think I would like to say that there is really a painful irony sometimes in these conversations about the fact that the more we talk about inside baseball, and the more we talk about the county looking too far in and of itself on things that most people don't care about, the longer those conversations go, and the more we have those conversations. So sometimes by specifically trying to address why people don't pay attention or why people aren't informed on the county stuff, those are the moments where we really fundamentally lose people. And, I see ourselves as a group, whether we're going to embark on this process, or whether it's going to be an elected charter review committee, whether there's going to be other recommendations that come forward, we're staring down a pretty long path here, one way or another. And I'll be mindful of saying that no matter what path we take, nobody's going to care until the day they show up to the ballot box and they're trying to decipher what it is at the bottom of their ballot, question 17, 18, and 19. So to that end, I just want to say my firm and first biggest stance on this is we are in the middle of a cost of living crisis in the United States. We are nowhere else is that felt more than in seasonal communities like ours. We have an opportunity as a regional government to do things that our local governments just are not designed to do. They are slow-moving apparatuses that are great at self-government, and there's a lot of pride in that in New England. But at the same time, when your legislative body meets at best 2 times a year, you're not able to get real policies and real change done. And that's an advantage that we have here at the county, regardless of the structure, to actually address those big issues. So my first ask of everyone here is that as we move forward from this, let's not get wrapped around the axle on things that, frankly, no one's going to care about. And not to say they don't matter, because they do, but there's other big things that we can't forsake as we get lost in this conversation. And the second thing I want to say is there are multiple ways to change the charter. One of them is changing the structure of government, which has to take the most steps, right? You go in front of the assembly, you go in front of the commissioners, you go in front of the legislature, and then you go in front of the voters. At any point in time, all those conversations might be for naught. At the same time, there's the other 97% of the charter that you could also change. And, there's this, in the LSAT logic games, there's the concept of a logical fallacy. We're not in the logical reasoning part of it, where you assume this because of that. And one logical fallacy we're falling into is all of a sudden, by changing the whole structure of our county government, we're going to end up with a panacea where all the issues that we've been running into over the last years get solved. And I'm a little lost to see how that's going to happen, because as the delegate from Brewster said, you're going to have that tension in a checks and balances system no matter what. So I would be, and this is not to say I want to stand in the way of the Charter Review Committee doing its thing, but while we're speaking words of wisdom into the ether of this committee, I would like to encourage the committee to also give a look at the other 97% of the charter that they can also change without requiring many, many additional steps. And maybe there is dysfunction in the county, without a doubt, but maybe we can solve that by addressing clarification of who has authority to do what, who has oversight to do what, where do these decisions get made. So again, I encourage this Charter Review Committee to do as it sees fit. That's the committee, and that's the makeup of it. But if we want to have conversations that might lead to something and might not get us wrapped around, I would also encourage them to at least take a look at those portions of the charter that aren't going to cause the most contention, but might actually cause some good change. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I'm going to stop this conversation at this point because I'd like to go on to the next. This is what we had envisioned at Charter Review, to just get some comments. We've gotten comments, and we'll have the Charter Review Commission take a look at the minutes here, and we'll ask them to listen to the meeting, and then we will go forward with Charter Review and report back to you in a timely fashion. So Delegate Green, no, we're going to go on to B, proposed ordinance 2025-10 to amend the Code of Cape Cod Commission Regulation of General Application, Chapter D, Development Agreement Regulations. This has already been discussed. It's been the point of a public hearing. I think we should put this as a motion to accept it, and then it'll be seconded, and then we'll have a discussion and then a vote. That's how this one's gonna go.
Madam Speaker, I move that we approve proposed ordinance 25-10.
Second.
And let's have a roll. No, actually, now it's discussion. So who would like to begin the discussion? I'm going to start with Delegate O'Malley, and then we'll go to Delegate Green.
I'm going to move to amend this motion to postpone, and I'm not sure quite what I'm looking for in terms of time. I'm happy to put a specific time frame on that from a month or two, a few meetings. Pending receipt of this body of further clarification about
I'm
about
going
these
to
about
send
these
this
changes.
over to the clerk because this is like a procedural
It's
issue.
a receipt.
Please. So let's please hear from the clerk.
In other words, the intent of this motion is to say, I think we need more information than we've received so far.
So you want to postpone it?
I
We
want to
understand
postpone
that.
discussion.
Okay, Mr. Clerk.
You can certainly move whatever you'd like, and if it gets seconded and the chair puts it in, but I do want to remind everybody that under the Cape Cod Commission Act, the Assembly has 60 days to hold a public hearing, which we did, and act on this. And that although I was on vacation that day, I did get an email from the Commission Council on the 6th. And 60 days from the 6th is August 5th. And our next regular meeting is on August 6th. So I do want to remind you of that the Cape Cod Commission Act mandates the Assembly to act within 60 days and either accept or adopt the ordinance or to object and send it back with reasons. That's what the act says.
So before you go, my question to the clerk is, at this point, is this the time to move? We already have a motion on the floor and seconded. So can you please help us out with procedural with what the delegate, he now wants to move in the middle of something else to postpone it.
That's certainly the case. I'm just letting you know that you've got certain, you can always make a motion to postpone, but on this particular thing, because the Cape Cod Commission Act has certain stipulations, you'd be failing to do what the Cape Cod Commission Act tells you if you post.
But my question is, in the middle of a motion that's been seconded, can you do a motion to postpone? You just answer yes or no.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Just want to make sure. Yep, okay.
Can I
Yes,
point,
Delegate
just a point of
Freisel.
order, just a point of order.
Delegate Freisel.
Just a point of
please
order.
Go ahead.
Just to make clear, if we fail to meet the 60 days, all right, if we do not act, so if this motion to postpone passes, and we don't meet the 60 days, either accepting or rejecting, it becomes a reg, right? Without our action, it will become effective or not?
Well, I'm out of my depth here. I see that there are two people from the Cape Cod Commission that are on the call, but I assume that you know what, I'm not going to guess.
Okay, no, but we're not just going to call on the attorney. We need a motion to suspend the rules because we're going to do this right, or we're not going to do it at all. So is there a motion to suspend the rules? We don't,
You can suspend.
we've convened.
However, under our rules, the speaker can use their discretion to suspend for a brief question and answer with staff or county officials.
Thank you.
You can always take a motion, but you don't need a motion.
No, thank you very much. Very good. Good to know. So please go ahead, the counsel for the Cape Cod Commission, and let us know what happens if this gets postponed today.
Thank
You're
you.
muted, counsel. Oh, yeah, here we go.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker, members of the Assembly. So the Cape Cod Commission Act requires you to do one of two things, either adopt this as an ordinance today or return it for restudying and redrafting. So those are your two choices in terms of the action you can take. You would not be following the requirements if you were to just vote to postpone. You would have to do one of these two.
Okay, thank you so much. Yes, Delegate O'Malley, what would you like to do?
Then I would like to move to return it to the Cape Cod Commission for restudy and redrafting.
Okay, but you'd also have to have reasons, and somebody would have to second that.
Of course. Okay. Are you withdrawing your motion to postpone? Because there's a
Yes.
motion on the, okay.
Yes.
Okay. So what's next, Mr. Clark?
Point of order.
Please go ahead, Deputy Speaker.
Point of order, Mr. Clerk, to you through the speaker. Would simply rejecting the motion to approve ordinance 25-10 be sufficient to return the ordinance unapproved to the,
So in other words, if we took a vote and it was rejected, would that?
is that a return or do you need a separate motion to?
I would be completely comfortable if it was about our charter or Robert's rules. However, if it's about Robert's rules and our charter and the way that it relates to the Commission Act, I would defer to Council Wilgus and Director Senatori.
So before, I'm going to ask you something, Council. What I'm asking you is this: would it work if we voted on this, and in the event it didn't pass, then we'd have to follow your rule in terms of providing reasons? But if it passes, even though some people might vote no, then so be it. So does that sound reasonable, that we take a vote on it and the chips fall where they may?
So just to clarify, Madam Speaker, you're asking whether if you voted to remand this back, what is the vote that you're taking?
Okay, so we would take a vote on whether to pass this. Okay? It's like normal, everyday vote.
Yes.
And if 51% of the assembly said yay, then done. However, if 51% of the assembly did not say yes and it failed, then we would have to go through the mandate of providing reasons, and that's how it works. Is that correct?
Yes. So yes, if that motion failed, you'd have to take a second motion in which you would vote to remand it back and give reasons why.
If it failed.
If it failed. If it failed,
Okay.
if it passes, you're done.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Clark.
Thought a little bit more about this. Essentially, what you're doing by making a motion, Delegate O'Malley, is trying to amend the motion to adopt that the Deputy Speaker made. And you can certainly try to amend that motion to a motion to object and give a reason for why. And then if that's seconded and the speaker asks for discussion and you have a vote on that and that fails, you'd be left with the original motion, which is to adopt. So that's one way you could.
Point of order, Madam Speaker, again.
Sure, Delegate.
We're looking at the Act, Section 6A.
Yes.
If we do not accept it and we reject it, we need to file a written report. We can't simply just orally give a reason. We need a written report why we are objecting.
I'm aware of that.
Okay.
Okay. So, yes, please, Deputy Speaker, because I would like to have more discussion and then take a vote.
Of course, and to that end, point of order, to our clerk, through the speaker, it would be my impression that the best way to go forward would be not to permit a motion to remand after a motion to approve, but instead would be to allow as those are contradictory motions, and it would be to move forward with the motion to approve. And if the motion to approve fails, then move on to a motion to remand with recommendations. Would that be a proper understanding?
Okay, so
Point of order.
we're not going to do a point of order.
Well,
Right
you
now,
allowed
this
a
is-
point of order with.
No, we are
Delegate
going to
Patel.
only do
That-
what I recognize. So at this point, there was a question I thought there was a question to the clerk. We're going to go in order of how things.
We have never
yet.
done that
So
before. We've
was
never,
there something-
not allowed.
Delegate
Oh.
Green,
And
you cannot talk until you're recognized, period. Yes, Mr. Clerk, will you just ask a question from
I'm not sure
the
what the
Deputy
question is.
Speaker? Would you like to repeat that, Deputy Speaker?
Sure. Wouldn't it be more appropriate, Mr. Clerk, Madam Speaker, for us as an assembly wouldn't it be more appropriate for us as an assembly to discuss and reject or approve the motion to approve? And then if the motion to approve fails, then consider Delegate O'Malley's motion to remand as two separate motions. It's my understanding of Robert's rules that you can't simultaneously have two contravening motions on the floor.
And I agree with that. So now we're going to have a discussion on the motion, and then we're going to have a vote whether to approve or not approve. And now, Delegate Green, would you like to be recognized?
Yes, Madam Speaker. I
Okay,
have
please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have never in my years, and this is my 10th year on the Assembly, ever seen a speaker say that you can put that an amendment to a motion is not acceptable. I've never seen that.
Would you like to talk about the merits of this motion? The merits of the motion for the Cape Cod, I'm giving you a chance to do that because we're going to talk about the merits of it and then we're going to vote on it. Would you like to talk about that?
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Sure.
So I have been a long proponent of saying in the Assembly that when the commission has something that they're working on, that they need the approval of the Assembly, that they alert the Assembly when they start working on it, that they are working on it, that they provide information to the full Assembly, the meeting schedule, any drafts that they do, any reports that are written, any comments that are made, and that when they give updates to the they specifically have a time when they come to the Assembly and they discuss it with the Assembly when they're working on it initially and then after the draft has been done, so that we're informed. We're not just rubber stamping something, that we're not pushed something that may have implications to our town that we're just not aware of. As Delegate Frederickson said last time, even one word change could make a difference for our town, maybe 5 years from now. So, I mean, this is something I take very seriously. And these regulations, I do not understand in total. I did have the clerk send to the delegates today. I know it's last minute, but we have, 60 days and it wasn't, the clock has been counting, even though there have been, I don't know. It doesn't seem like we have a proper 60 days to me. And I did provide some questions that I had. If any one of the delegates have any doubts whatsoever about anything that I provided today, I think it's your obligation to remand this back to the commission so that they provide us with the answers. I mean, I hate to do something like that, to vote no, but if anybody has doubts about any aspect of this, of any words that have been changed, because it's not clear to me, and I don't understand how it could be clear, 100% clear to any one of us. I mean, I've spent a considerable amount of time on this, and I just can't support it. So I would sincerely appreciate if everybody could really seriously look into your brain, your heart, your soul, and really think about our obligation here on the Assembly. I mean, yeah, we make $824 a year take home, but this is a huge responsibility, and we have a huge responsibility today. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Green. Who would like to go next? Delegate Frizzell, did you know? I only said that because I know Delegate O'Malley spoke, but I will go back to Delegate O'Malley, absolutely. But I just want to make sure everybody gets a chance, Delegate O'Malley. That's why. So Frizzell, Delegate Frizzell, please go ahead.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I spent some time on this regulation and also with the email that was sent today. First of all, I don't know who is the author of these remarks that you've been sent to us. They're not identified. So who drafted? I'd like to know who drafted those comments that were made.
We're not going to be able to do
No?
question to question.
Well,
but just
okay.
please-
I'll just say that I would have appreciated an identity of an author of those comments. They're just comments sent to us. I'm not saying that means they're not valid, but I would appreciate anyone who sends us comments that we're supposed to take very seriously, that's supposed to be objecting to a long process that was done by the commission. They would identify the author of it. It's not identified. Nonetheless, I did look at those comments, and I saw most of them as really micromanaging the commission, frankly. That's not our job. I have thought long and hard about what our job is as part of the Assembly. We are part of this total picture for ultimate approval of an ordinance that does come from the commission. And we're not rubber stamps either. That's true. On the other hand, we're not here to redo what the commission does. I did speak with the Brewster representative on the commission. I went through this agreement and this new regulation with that person who happens to be the dean of the commission, the longest serving member of the commission for almost 30 years. And this person, and also with our town planner, I got satisfied that this new regulation is not really substantially very different from the old regulation. It has some streamlining. Yes, that's the point of streamlining. It won't be streamlined if it's a repetition of the old one. So it has some streamlining, but I don't see that, number one, the public process is left out. It is not left out. It could be a different period of time. I am not going to play micromanager and say, oh, the commission said 30 days. I would have said 40 days. I don't think that's our job. All right. So for that reason, those comments fall by the wayside for me. And this role, if I was on the commission, it might be a different role, but I'm in the assembly, not the commission. When it comes to the local, whether the local governments are going to be in some way perhaps pressured or going to be on a track that would make life harder for them in these development agreements, I don't see that. The reference being made in your comments that you submitted to us for Section 6 aren't appropriate in my book. They're not right. I don't see that actually in this regulation. The local authorities are not mandated to do anything here. If it's a DRI, the commission could still be involved. If the commission's involved, the commission's involved. If the local authority wants to be involved, then it can do one of these. It's not mandated to do one of these as I read this regulation. And if it does want to do it, then it can take that path if it meets other criteria in the regulation concerning the LCPs and a certified LCP. But if there's a DRI involved, the commission is never out of the picture one way or another here. And if the local community wants to do this and they're able to do this, they meet the requirements of the regulation, then they can do this within their own local zoning and planning authority. So I don't see how the local governments in some way are put at a disadvantage by this regulation. I don't see where the public process and public input is put at a disadvantage by this new regulation. Does it streamline the process? Yes, it does. That's the point. And does that mean less bureaucratic time being taken on this is bad? I would say I'm leaving that to the good judgment of the commission. That's where they come in. I'm not going to second guess them about that. This is what they do. This is what their job is. It's not mine to be in the weeds the way they are. So I'm going to trust them, and I'm going to show deference, and I'm going to show some restraint. That's why I come out and approve.
Thank you, Delegate Frizzell. Delegate Gallagher, please go ahead.
I'll just keep this brief. At Delegate Green's suggestion 2 weeks ago, I conferred with 3 members of my town government, and I'll read you just one sentence of the reply from my town planner. I don't see any reason to not endorse the proposed revisions. And that's the opinion of the Eastham government. Thank you.
I'm just going to let you know that I did the same. And before we take a vote on this, I'm going to refer to Director Senatori to respond to what Delegate Green has presented. But I'm going to give you a moment on that, Director Senatori, because we're going to finish with anybody else that wants to talk here before we vote. And I know about you, Delegate O'Malley, but is there anybody else that hasn't spoken yet that would like to speak? Seeing none, Delegate O'Malley.
I think my objection is almost entirely about process here, although I do have this concern that that there's a shifting of the burden of the regulatory review to the towns, and I could be understanding that wrong from what Delegate Frizzell has just said. My biggest objection is that we've been given a piece of an ordinance that's some 22 pages, 29 pages, and 21 pages in length, without a red line. And for us to go through that, those of us who are not familiar with these regs, who haven't read them before, for us to go through that and to be able to understand what's new, what's not new, what's been added, what's been taken out, made this an almost impossible task. So really, my objection here is I don't think this has been made clear enough what we're accomplishing with this. It's not substantive objection, particularly if the concern about the smaller towns is not founded.
Director Senatori, can you respond to that paperwork that you got today, the email? And then after that, I'm going to let Delegate Green have the last word, and then we're going to vote. So please go ahead, Director Senatori.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. We did have an opportunity this afternoon, and certainly Council's gone through page by page every point that was made in that document. And I do appreciate that you are paying attention and really want to be involved in this ordinance. I can assure you that the commission has had significant amount of process. We've gone through these regulations with a fine-tooth comb, really kind of making the purpose is this to streamline, as Delegate Frizzell mentioned. There are, I would say, some inaccuracies in the documents that we were provided that we would certainly want to clarify should any of this information be raised in a format that's any more specific than that. But certainly, happy to answer questions if you have any. I am concerned that that information may not be as clear as to what the changes are in the regulations and the intent. If you have more specifics, Jessica has gone through and can respond point by point, but I do think that that is a concern of ours.
Yes, I just wanted to acknowledge that you didn't swallow it whole and agree with it. So basically, that's what I was looking for, just so the delegates would know that you had some issues with it. Okay, so Delegate Green, you get your last 5 minutes, and then we are going to have a vote.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Director Senatori, for your response, and the delegate from Brewster. First, I'd like to address what the delegate from Brewster said. I was provided with this document by one of my select board members. As far as the accuracy of that is concerned, I have told my select board, I have told this assembly, I am not an attorney. I am not a contract specialist. I am not, I don't have a crystal ball, nor do any of us, but I am concerned about the future of our county. And as a whole, and especially the seashore towns. So when there are some concerns that look like they're maybe important, I want to delve down and try to find the answers. So, I mean, one of the things that I did is I did talk with my town administrator. My town administrator, as Director Senatori knows, went back through his emails to February and did not find anything in those emails alerting the towns that this was going on. And the towns and the select board members that I spoke with and had contact with did not have any knowledge that this was going on either. So be that where it is, that is, from me, from my standpoint, that's where I'm coming from. The other thing is that what is concerning is that Director Senatori just said that most, that there were inaccuracies, but she didn't say that there were not accuracies as well. So if there are some accuracies here, might we have some questions really, really honestly? And I do. If all of these things that have been put forth are not inaccurate, I can't vote for this. I would entertain the amendment that Delegate O'Malley made to, unfortunately, I mean, I wish we could just postpone it, but if we have to remand it back to the commission, I would do that so that they can go through this, they can come back to us. And I mean, what's a delay going to do, really? I mean, it would satisfy all of us, it would satisfy all our towns, and it would involve us in the process, which we should have been, because we are asked to approve this. And we all know that the regional policy plan is coming up, and that has been going on for quite some time. We get to do the same thing with the regional policy plan. I don't think that most people have been following that. So, I mean, this is a concern. This is an alarm. This is a drum I keep beating, just like the grants, which has been a drum I've I've been meeting, since I've been on the assembly, and finally several other delegates have been taking that seriously. So please, I would hope that you would seriously consider all I'm asking for is a postponement for the commission to respond to these, and then we can vote.
Thank you very much. If we could have a roll call vote, Mr. Clerk?
Delegate Frederickson,
And the vote is for what?
Yes, the vote is whether or not to approve this ordinance for the Cape Cod
Yes,
Commission.
approve it.
Thank you.
Delegate Frizzell,
Yes.
Delegate Fuller,
Yes.
Delegate Gallagher,
Yes.
Deputy Speaker Gasson,
Yes.
Delegate Green,
No,
Delegate Harder,
Yes.
Delegate Killian,
Yes.
Delegate O'Malley,
Abstain.
I already tried. I literally wrote that text to Pat today.
Delegate, or Dean Omen.
Yes.
Please mute Delegate Frederickson, if you could mute yourself. I'm sorry that, yep, thank you.
What was I? Dean Omen is a. Dean,
Yes.
all right.
Yes.
Speaker Protash,
Yes.
Delegate Sampson, Delegate Sampson, Delegate Ty,
Yes.
Delegate Warner,
yes,
Delegate Wyman Colombo.
Yes.
Have it at 12, representing 87.91% of the county.
Thank you very much. That motion passes. Next on the agenda, new business. Is there any? Yes,
Did
Mr.
get
Clark.
a resolution from Delegate Green about charter review.
Okay,
That's new and
that's new business?
Yep.
Okay. And you have new business, Delegate Green, because that's what this is now.
yes.
Okay, we're not going to discuss that proposal right now. I mean, that resolution.
No, I just would like to know when I'm going to
I do
receive
not know at this
responses.
point. Okay, any other new business, Mr. Clark?
nothing I'm aware of.
Okay, announcements. So in the future, one announcement is to please email the clerk by Tuesdays, whether or not you're gonna be able to attend meetings. Doing it by email saves some time. Instead of like quorum calls, so to speak. I mean, if you want to call and ask any questions, of course, but if you could just let him know by email on Tuesdays before a meeting, that would be efficient. Next, the Children's Cove wants to have a tour. They want you to come on a tour. Stacy Gallagher would like you to take a tour. The next date for that tour, I believe, is July 22nd. Is that accurate, Mr. Clerk? July 22nd?
That's my recollection, Madam.
Yeah, so it's at 9 o'clock. If you could respond to our clerk, whether or not you could make it that day. And in the event you cannot make it to the Children's Cove on July 22nd at 9 a.m., if you'd like to take a tour of Children's Cove, please reach out to our our county administrator, and Stacy Gallagher, Director of Children's Cove, and make it known that you would like to have a tour, and maybe a time could be provided for you. That's what I did a couple of years ago. So that's another avenue to take a tour. Yes, Delegate.
Is that the only date? I thought there was another.
It's the only, well, the other date was today.
Oh.
So that's gone by. Thank you. Yeah, the other date was today. Okay, so that's two announcements. My third announcement, which I think is certainly relevant today, is that the Cape Cod Commission Regional Policy Plan update, they're going to do a tour of the Cape to talk about it's going to be sub-regional public hearings. They're going to be held on the following dates and then the following locations. I'm just going to sort of make this public service announcement today. Wednesday, July 30th, and this is all on the Cape Cod Commission's website. Wednesday, July 30th at 1 p.m. and that is in West Yarmouth. And for more details, just go to the website. Wednesday, July 30th at 5 p.m. and that is in Falmouth at the library. Then Thursday, July 31st at 10 a.m. and that is online and by telephone. Next, and I think the last date looks like Thursday, July 31st at 5 p.m. in Eastham. So those are all times that the public and members of any boards could go and hear some information about the regional policy plan and the update, and you can provide information, provide recommendations. So these are all times for that to happen for the public. Delegate Frizzell, sure.
if it's appropriate, this last discussion of this ordinance to me raises a procedural point that is somewhat tied with this information. I think it would be helpful when the commission knows that something they're about to initiate is going to lead to an ordinance before this body, that at the very start of that process, they come before us and let us know, and I think this is what Delegate Green was also mentioning, let us know what's going to be coming down the road. I don't care if it's going to be 12 months down the road. Let us know we're starting a process on this new regulation. This is what we're planning to do. We're not going to come back and draft it with us, but give us a notice at the very beginning of the process of what this is going to be when it's going to end up as an ordinance on our desk and what they're planning in terms of the public input process. I think it would be helpful for us to see that at the very beginning. And then the onus is on us to follow up on that too. But at least we're noticed at the very beginning because we are going to be part of that process at the end of the day. And I might avoid this sort of thing we had on this last reg.
Yeah, and that's why I'm announcing this right now, just so you know, but I understand what you're saying, and I know that Director Senatori is still online, and I'm sure that point was well taken, and so they can do what they see fit with that information. And again, these are all times that people can go, if it's in your area, and you can opine, and you can give information and get information. Okay, so can we now have a motion to adjourn?
Madam Speaker, I move that we adjourn.
Roll call vote, Mr. Clark.
Delegate Frederickson. Delegate Frizzell.
Yes.
Delegate Fuller.
Yes.
Delegate Gallagher.
Yes.
Deputy Speaker Gasson.
Yes.
Delegate Green.
Yes.
Delegate Harder.
Yes.
Delegate Killian.
Yes.
Delegate O'Malley.
Yes.
Dean Omen.
Yes.
Speaker Potash.
Yes.
Delegate Sampson. Delegate Ty. Delegate Warner.
Yes.
Delegate Wyman Columbus.
Yes.
That is.
That motion passes. Good night, Cape Cod. Thank you.